What do you feel when you look at this picture? Don't you think this is such a beautiful habitat where diverse creatures coexist? In other words, this ecosystem has biodiversity. You would not know what biodiversity means, but it's perfectly fine because in this presentation I would explain about biodiversity in great detail. Let's get started. Biodiversity is a variety of life in a particular habitat or ecosystem. The Amazon rainforest would be an example of a place which has great biodiversity. Biodiversity is extremely important for both the humanity and for the ecosystem. First, places with high biodiversity is more resilient to changes like climate change, extreme weather, and disease outbreaks. Also, it has economic benefits. Tourism, agriculture, and fishing all rely on biodiversity, so if biodiversity decreases, there will be financial loss in that country. Last but not least, it can regulate climate change. For instance, trees absorb CO2, and also a healthy habitat is capable of regulating the water cycle, decreasing extreme weather. If you look at this picture, you would understand better that how biodiversity can stabilize the ecosystem. The vulture, the predator of tree creatures, would not be extincted when rhinos decline because it still has African skunks and leopards to consume for. This is how biodiversity contributes to stabilizing the ecosystem. However, this biodiversity, which is this much important, is being threatened these days. If you look at this chart, you can see that biodiversity has decreased excessively when compared to the 1970s. Then why is this happening? If you look at this picture, you might guess the reason. First reason is climate change. Climate change leads to problems like habitat loss and food scarcity, which eventually lessens biodiversity. Next is pollution. Pollution decreases the popularity of creatures that live in a certain habitat. Think about it. How many creatures would be capable of living in this or these places? There would not be much. The third reason is invasive species. Invasive species are non-native species which compete with native ones and eventually decrease biodiversity in that habitat. The famous examples of this would be giant kings or the yellow crazy ant. Then how can we protect biodiversity? First, planting trees would be a lot helpful for protecting biodiversity. It is because trees can provide habitat for lots of creatures. Next, governments should manage invasive species by monitoring them and regulating the population of them. Lastly, we need education for both students and adults and spread the act to protect biodiversity. Now this is the end of my presentation, and if you have no questions, let's move on to quiz. First question, why is biodiversity important? Yeah.
It regulates climate changes.
Yeah. Biodiversity is important because it can stabilize the ecosystem and has economic benefits and can regulate climate change. Second question, why is biodiversity being threatened?
Climate change and pollution.
Yeah. And one more.
Invasive species.
Yeah. Biodiversity is being threatened because of climate change, pollution, and invasive species, but I didn't write on the screen on mistake. Robert Swan once said, the greatest threat to our planet is to believe that someone else would save it. And it's same for our planet Earth. If it goes on like this and biodiversity decreases like this, Earth would be destroyed in close future. So this is time to stop just talking and take into action. Thank you for listening.